Captain Elias Carter stood in the grand hall of the Zordath Empire, feeling like a mouse in a room full of lions. The hall was massive, with golden pillars stretching toward a ceiling covered in glowing symbols. The air smelled of strange spices, and alien nobles in dark robes watched him with sharp, unreadable eyes. Elias had been sent as humanity's diplomat to discuss peace with the Zorvath. The war between their species had lasted for 5 long years, and now both sides were finally ready to negotiate. He had expected difficult talks, arguments, and maybe even a few threats. But he never expected this. "You will marry Princess Thalvera," Emperor Talzok declared, his deep voice echoing through the hall. Elias blinked. His translator earpiece had to be malfunctioning. Did he just say, "marriage"? "Excuse me?" Elias asked, his voice calm, though his mind was racing. "You have proven yourself in battle," the Emperor continued, completely serious. "Your bravery at the Battle of Oros Prime was witnessed by our warriors. You fought with honor. Our laws demand that the most powerful leaders form bonds to ensure peace. You, Captain Elias Carter of Earth, will become the mate of my daughter, Princess Thalvera." Elias slowly turned his head toward the princess, who stood near the Emperor's throne. She was tall, easily a head taller than him, with deep blue skin and glowing golden eyes. Her black armor had sharp edges, and she looked like someone who could break a steel bar with her bare hands. To his surprise, Thalvera looked just as shocked as he was. She was staring at her father, her arms crossed tightly. "You can't be serious," she finally said, her voice filled with disbelief. "I am always serious," the Emperor replied. "This is the best way to unite our people." Elias cleared his throat. "With all due respect, humanity does not handle peace treaties this way." The nobles murmured among themselves. A large Zorvath general, his face covered in old battle scars, stepped forward. "Are you saying our ways are wrong, human?" His tone was calm, but there was a clear challenge in his words. Elias raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. "Not at all. I'm just saying humans don't use marriage as a way to stop wars." The Emperor's glowing eyes studied Elias for a long moment. Then he sighed. "This is why your species is still young. You think treaties made of paper are stronger than blood." Princess Thalvera stepped forward. "Father, I understand your logic, but this is ridiculous. I do not even know this human. And that is why you will spend time together," the Emperor said, waving a hand. "You will learn each other's ways. The ceremony will happen in 3 cycles." Elias almost choked. 3 cycles? You mean days? Yes. The captain shook his head. This was a joke. It had to be. But the serious expressions of the Zorvath nobles told him otherwise. He glanced at Thalvera again. She was frowning, arms crossed, clearly just as unhappy about this as he was. That was a small relief. "All right," Elias said carefully. "Let's say, for argument's sake, I agree to this. What happens if I refuse?" The Emperor's expression darkened. "Then the treaty is void, and the war continues." Elias inhaled sharply. He had survived the war so far, but he had seen entire colonies burn to ash. He had seen ships explode with thousands of lives on board. If refusing this marriage meant the war would start again, could he really say no? His mind raced through possibilities. There had to be a way out of this without causing another conflict. Thalvera sighed loudly, breaking the silence. "This is absurd." She turned to Elias, arms still crossed. "Human, do you even want to be here?" "Not particularly," he admitted. "Good. At least we agree on something." The Emperor's gaze flicked between them. "Then it is settled. You will begin your time together immediately. Learn, understand, and prepare." Dismissed. Guards stepped forward, gesturing for Elias to follow them. As he walked beside Thalvera, he whispered, "So, any ideas on how to get out of this?" She smirked slightly. "Maybe." For the first time that day, Elias felt a spark of hope. Maybe this wasn't the end of his freedom just yet. Elias Carter followed the Zorveth guards through the palace halls, his mind racing. The golden walls were covered in strange symbols, glowing faintly as they passed. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense. Every step he took felt heavier. He had faced enemy ships, dangerous missions, and impossible negotiations, but nothing had prepared him for this. An arranged marriage to an alien princess. Beside him, Princess Talvera walked with long, confident strides. She looked as frustrated as he felt. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. Elias glanced at her. "Glad we agree on that." She sighed, rubbing her forehead. "My father is stubborn. He believes old traditions are the only way to secure peace. He does not understand that times have changed." Elias nodded. "Yeah, well, humans don't use marriage to stop wars. We sign treaties, shake hands, and hope no one breaks their promise." Zalvera smirked slightly. "That is why your species is still learning." Elias rolled his eyes but decided not to argue. Right now, he needed information. "So, what exactly happens now?" "You will stay in the royal wing of the palace," Zalvera said. "We are expected to spend time together and prove to my people that this union is real." "And if I refuse?" Zalvera stopped walking and faced him. Her golden eyes studied him carefully. "Then my father will see it as an insult. The alliance will be broken, and your people will not like what happens next." Elias sighed. He didn't need details to understand the threat. If he walked away now, the war would start again. Millions could die. "So, I just play along?" he asked. "For now," she replied. They reached a pair of enormous doors guarded by two Zordeth warriors. The doors opened with a deep rumble, revealing a luxurious chamber. Elias stepped inside. The room was massive, with a high ceiling covered in shimmering blue lights that mimicked a night sky. A large table stood in the center, covered in strange fruits and drinks. The furniture was sleek, made of dark metal and soft cushions. One side of the room had a balcony overlooking the Zorveth capital, a city filled with towering buildings, flying ships, and streets glowing with neon light. "You will stay here," Zalvera said. "Guards will be posted outside. If you need anything, ask." Elias turned to her. "And you? Do I get a schedule or something? How does this work?" She hesitated for a moment, then crossed her arms. "Tomorrow, we will have our first official appearance together. A ceremony to show the people that we are." She made a face. "Getting along?" Elias chuckled. "You really don't like this either, huh?" Zalvera's expression softened to just a little. "No, I do not." "Well, at least we're on the same page." She nodded, then turned to leave. "Rest, human. Tomorrow will be long." The doors closed behind her, and Elias let out a long breath. The next day, Elias stood in the center of the royal garden, dressed in ceremonial Zorveth robes, dark red with golden patterns. He felt ridiculous. Hundreds of alien nobles surrounded them, watching with curiosity. A few whispered among themselves. Zalvera stood beside him, wearing battle armor decorated with glowing symbols. Unlike him, she looked completely at ease. An elder Zorveth noble stepped forward. "Today we welcome the union of two powerful warriors. May their bond bring strength and peace to both our worlds." Elias forced a smile. "Just play along," he reminded himself. The noble continued speaking about tradition, honor, and unity, but Elias was barely listening. He was too focused on the fact that the crowd was being watched by strangers who didn't look like nobles. Near the edge of the garden, a hooded figure moved between the guests. Something about them felt wrong. Elias leaned slightly toward Zalvera. "I think we have a problem." She followed his gaze. Her eyes narrowed. "I see them." Then, before either of them could react, the figure pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A loud explosion shook the ground. Smoke filled the garden as screams echoed through the air. Elias grabbed Zalvera's arm and pulled her back as another explosion erupted nearby. Guards rushed forward, weapons drawn. Assassins, one of them shouted. Zalvera's expression darkened. The Gilari, she growled. Elias clenched his jaw. He didn't know much about the Gilari Dominion, but he did know one thing. They wanted this alliance to fail. Zalvera pulled out a weapon from her belt. Stay close, human. Elias smirked. I was about to say the same to you. They turned to face the chaos together. Smoke filled the royal garden. The ground trembled from the force of the explosions. Screams echoed as nobles ran for cover. Zorveth guards rushed forward, weapons drawn, but the enemy was already inside. Elias Carter's heart pounded as he scanned the chaos. His instincts screamed at him to move. He grabbed Princess Xalvera's arm and pulled her behind a stone pillar just as another explosion sent shards of metal flying past them. Who are they? Elias shouted over the noise. The Gilari, Xalvera growled, gripping her weapon tightly. They'd want to stop this alliance at any cost. Elias peeked from behind the pillar. He saw the attackers clearly now. Tall figures in dark armor, their glowing red eyes scanning the battlefield. They moved fast, cutting down anyone in their path. Xalvera gritted her teeth. Cowards. Attacking a peace ceremony. One of the Gilari raised a weapon toward a group of unarmed nobles. Elias didn't think, he acted. He picked up a fallen Zorveth guard's energy blaster and fired. The shot hit the attacker square in the chest, knocking them to the ground. The Xalvera gave him a sharp look. You can fight. Elias smirked. What, you thought humans only talk? Xalvera didn't reply, but there was something new in her golden eyes. Respect. She activated her own weapon, a curved energy blade that crackled with blue light. Stay close. We end this now. They moved together. Xalvera was a warrior, fast and deadly, cutting through the enemy with ease. Elias wasn't as strong, but he was quick and precise, taking cover and firing when the enemy least expected it. The Gilari weren't prepared for resistance. They had expected an easy attack, not a fight. As more Zorveth guards joined the battle, the attackers began to retreat. One of the Gilari, taller than the rest, stepped forward. His armor was different, decorated with red markings. He stared at Xalvera. Princess, he said, his voice cold. This marriage is a mistake. The Zorvath should not bow to weaklings. Xalvera's eyes burned with fury. And I suppose you decide that. The Gilari leader raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Elias shot first. The blast hit the enemy's weapon, knocking it from his hand. Bad idea, Elias said. The leader glared at him. Then, with a sharp whistle, he signaled his soldiers. Smoke grenades exploded around them, covering the enemy's retreat. When the smoke cleared, the Gilari were gone. The garden was a disaster. The once beautiful space was now filled with rubble, fire, and wounded nobles. Xalvera exhaled sharply. This is only the beginning. Elias looked at her. They won't stop, will they? No. She turned to face him fully. And now, human, they will see you as a threat too. Elias sighed. Great, so now I have an empire and an assassin group watching me. Xalvera smirked. Welcome to Zorveth politics. Before Elias could reply, the Emperor's voice rang through the ruins. Captain Carter. Elias turned to see Emperor Talzok approaching, flanked by guards. Despite the destruction, the Emperor looked calm, too calm. You have proven yourself once again, Talzok said. Elias frowned. I was just trying to survive. The Emperor stepped closer. You did more than survive. You protected my daughter. You fought alongside her. You did not run. Elias shifted uncomfortably. Well, yeah. What else was I supposed to do? Talzok smiled, but there was something calculating in his expression. You have made your decision clear. Elias blinked. What decision? The Emperor's gaze was sharp. You saved the princess. You fought for her. There is no greater proof of loyalty in our culture. Elias's stomach dropped. Wait, are you saying? Talzok nodded. The marriage will continue. Elias opened his mouth to protest, but then he saw Exalvera's face. She looked just as stunned as he felt. Father, she said slowly, perhaps we should. No, the emperor interrupted. The people will hear of this victory. They will see it as fate. The wedding will happen in 2 cycles. Elias groaned. First 3 cycles, now 2. Can we slow down? The emperor ignored him. He turned to the nobles who had gathered. Let it be known, Captain Elias Carter of Earth has proven himself worthy. The nobles began to cheer. Elias muttered under his breath, I think I just made things worse. Zalvera sighed. You did. Elias ran a hand through his hair. So, any new ideas on how to get out of this? Zalvera gave him a sideways glance. Maybe. Elias sighed again. Of course. As the crowd continued to celebrate, Elias realized something. He wasn't just a diplomat anymore. He was now a symbol, whether he liked it or not. And symbols had a way of making enemies. Elias Carter sat on the edge of the massive stone balcony, staring out at the Zorvath capital. The city stretched endlessly, its glowing blue towers reaching high into the night sky. The air smelled of something metallic, mixed with the lingering scent of smoke from the earlier attack. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I came here for peace talks, not wedding plans. Behind him, Zalvera leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You fought well today, she admitted. Elias glanced at her. Thanks, but that fight just made things worse. Your father thinks I actually want this marriage now. Zalvera exhaled slowly. The Gilari's attack made him more certain than ever. He believes this union is the only way to keep our enemies from trying again. Elias frowned. Do you believe that? She hesitated. No, the Gilari attacked because they fear change. This marriage won't stop them. If anything, it makes us bigger targets. Elias nodded. Glad we're still on the same page. Silence stretched between them for a moment before Zalvera spoke again. There is another way. Elias turned to her. I'm listening. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. A ship leaves for the outer colonies tomorrow. If you board it, you can disappear before the wedding. Elias raised an eyebrow. Run away. She gave him a sharp look. Call it strategic retreat. He chuckled but quickly shook his head. I can't. If I run, the Zorvath will see it as betrayal. The war will start again. Zalvera tensed, then looked away. Then we are trapped. Elias leaned back against the balcony railing. Not necessarily. We just need a plan that doesn't involve running or getting married. Zalvera smirked slightly. Then you better think fast. The wedding is in 2 cycles. Elias groaned. You keep reminding me. She tilted her head. I enjoy reminding you. Before Elias could respond, a sudden knock on the door made them both tense. A Zorvath guard stepped inside and bowed. Captain Carter, the Emperor requests your presence immediately. Elias sighed. Great. What now? Zalvera's smirk faded. Be careful. My father is not a patient man. Elias followed the guard through the long golden hallways of the palace. The Emperor was waiting in a private chamber, seated on a throne-like chair. His glowing eyes studied Elias as he entered. Captain, Talzok said. Sit. Elias sat across from him, keeping his expression neutral. You wanted to see me. The Emperor leaned forward. Your actions today prove your strength, but strength alone is not enough. Elias frowned. I don't follow. Talzok gestured to the city beyond the windows. The people talk. They ask, who is this human? Can he be trusted? Elias nodded. That's fair. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. If you are to become part of my family, you must earn their trust. Elias's stomach twisted. And how do I do that? The Emperor stood. Tomorrow, You will take the trial of honor. Elias blinked. The what now? Talzok's expression was unreadable. A test. One all warriors must face before claiming a position of power. If you succeed, the people will accept you. Elias had a bad feeling about this. And if I fail? The emperor's glowing eyes flickered. Then you will have proven you are not worthy of my daughter. Elias inhaled sharply. So this was his way of testing me. If he passed, he'd be trapped in this marriage. If he failed, well, he didn't want to think about what failure meant. He forced a grin. All right, what's the test? The emperor's lips curved slightly. You will find out soon enough. Elias groaned internally. Of course. As he left the chamber, Alvera was waiting for him in the hallway. Well, she asked. Elias sighed. Your father wants me to take the trial of honor. Xalvera's eyes widened slightly. That is unexpected. Let me guess, Elias muttered. It's dangerous. She hesitated. Only a few have ever failed. But those who do, she didn't finish the sentence. Elias frowned. Great, just great. Xalvera studied him for a moment. Then, to his surprise, she said, I will help you prepare. Elias blinked. Wait, you want me to pass? She smirked. I want to see if you can. Elias chuckled despite himself. Well, at least you're honest. As they walked back toward his chambers, he couldn't help but think. He had come here to stop a war, but somehow he had ended up fighting for his own survival. And if he wanted to make it out of this mess, he'd have to pass a test he knew nothing about. Just another day in diplomacy. Elias Carter stood in the center of a massive stone arena, feeling the heat of Zorvath's twin sons beating down on him. Thousands of Zorvath nobles, warriors, and civilians filled the towering stands, their glowing eyes locked onto him. The air buzzed with excitement and tension. He rolled his shoulders, adjusting the ceremonial armor Xalvera had given him. It was lightweight but strong, designed for movement rather than brute force. Good thing, too, because he still had no idea what he was about to face. Princess Xalvera stood beside him, arms crossed. I hope you're ready, she said. Elias gave her a dry look. I'd be more ready if someone actually told me what this trial is. Xalvera smirked. That would ruin the fun. Great, love surprises. A deep horn echoed across the arena, and the crowd went silent. The Emperor, Talzok, stood from his royal seat, his golden robes flowing in the wind. Today, his voice boomed, we witnessed the trial of honor, a test of strength, skill, and wisdom. Captain Elias Carter of Earth will prove his worth before the Zorvath people. The crowd roared, shaking the arena. Elias muttered under his breath, no pressure. Xalvera leaned in slightly. Stay alert. The trial has 3 stages. You must pass them all. Elias frowned. And if I don't? She hesitated. Then you won't leave this arena standing. Elias exhaled sharply. Of course. The Emperor raised his hand. Let the trial begin. A massive stone gate across the arena groaned open. From the shadows emerged a towering beast, 4-legged, armored, with curved horns and glowing red eyes. It snarled, revealing razor-sharp teeth. Elias took a step back. That thing is huge. Xalvera grinned. It's called a Vorkan. Your first challenge. Survive. The Vorkan roared and charged. Elias dodged to the side just in time, barely avoiding being trampled. The beast slammed into the arena wall, shaking the ground. Any advice? Elias shouted. Xalvera called from the sidelines. Hit its underbelly. It's the only weak spot. Elias looked at his weapon. A short, curved blade. Fantastic. The Vorkan turned and charged again. This time, Elias ran toward it. At the last second, he dove under its massive body, slashing at its stomach. The beast howled in pain, stumbling forward. The crowd gasped. Elias didn't wait. He sprinted to a fallen spear nearby, grabbed it, and using all his strength, drove it into the beast's chest. The Vorkan let out one final roar before collapsing. Silence filled the arena. Then the crowd erupted in cheers. Elias staggered back, panting. One down. What's next? The Emperor raised his hand again. The second trial. The path of the mind. The arena floor shifted, panels sliding open to reveal a massive maze. The walls were made of smooth black stone, twisting in all directions. Elias frowned. A puzzle. Zalvera nodded. You must find your way to the center before time runs out. Elias sighed, because fighting a giant monster wasn't enough. The moment he stepped inside, the walls began to shift, closing off pathways behind him. Okay, he muttered, moving quickly. Think, Carter. He ran down one path, only for the floor to vanish beneath him. He barely jumped back in time. Traps. Of course there are traps. He turned down another path and found himself facing a glowing wall of alien symbols. A test of the mind, he thought. A puzzle. He studied the symbols carefully. They looked similar to Zorvath writing he had seen before. Then he remembered. Zalvera had once told him the Zorvath word for strength was Jaktor. He pressed the matching symbols. The wall disappeared. Elias grinned. Gotcha. He sprinted forward, navigating the maze as the walls continued to shift. After what felt like an eternity, he reached the center. The crowd cheered again. Zalvera smirked from the stands. Not bad, human. Elias wiped sweat from his forehead. Please tell me the last trial is a nap. The Emperor stood once more. The final trial. The duel of honor. The arena floor shifted again, revealing a raised platform in the center. Elias's stomach dropped as a figure stepped onto the platform. It was a Zorvath warrior, tall and heavily armored, holding a double-bladed energy staff. His glowing eyes locked onto Elias. Zalvera's expression darkened. That's General Ralvek, one of the strongest warriors in the Empire. Elias groaned. Of course he is. Ralvek pointed his weapon at Elias. Fight me, human. If you can stand against me, you will have earned your place. Elias took a deep breath and stepped onto the platform. All right, he muttered. Let's dance. The final battle had begun. Elias Carter gripped his blade tightly, staring at General Ralvek, the towering Zorvath warrior before him. The arena was silent now, the crowd waiting for the duel to begin. The air was thick with tension. Ralvek spun his double-bladed energy staff with a practiced ease, the glowing blue edges humming with power. You are brave, human, he said in a deep voice. But bravery will not save you. Elias forced a grin. Good thing I have more than just bravery. A deep horn echoed across the arena. The duel had begun. Ralvek moved first, fast, too fast. Elias barely managed to dodge as the warrior's staff slashed through the air, missing his head by inches. He rolled to the side, trying to gain distance, but Ralvek was already on him. Elias raised his sword to block, and the impact sent a shockwave through his arms. His muscles burned from the force. Not bad, Ralvek said, stepping back. But not good enough. Elias exhaled sharply. All right, Carter. Time to get creative. Instead of attacking head-on, Elias shifted his stance, circling Ralvek. The general smirked. You are stalling. Nope, Elias replied. Just thinking. Then he moved. He lunged forward but ducked at the last second, sliding beneath Ralvek's strike. He slashed at the warrior's leg, only for his blade to bounce off the heavy armor. Ralvek spun and struck. Elias barely had time to react. The staff hit his side, sending him tumbling across the platform. Pain exploded in his ribs. Zalvera winced from the stands. Get up, human, she muttered. Elias groaned, pushing himself up. Relvek didn't give him a moment's rest. Another powerful swing came at him, and Elias barely managed to block. His blade sparked against the energy staff. He needed a new plan. Fast. Then he noticed something. Every time Relvek swung, his movements were wide, powerful, but slow to reset. That meant openings. Elias smirked. "All right, big guy. Let's see how you handle speed." This time, Elias didn't dodge. Instead, he charged straight at Relvek. The general swung again. Predictable. At the last moment, Elias ducked inside the attack, stepping in close. Relvek's eyes widened. Elias drove his elbow into the warrior's stomach, then spun behind him, slashing at the back of his knee. The blade cut through a weak spot in the armor. Relvek staggered. The crowd gasped. Elias didn't stop. He kicked Relvek's leg, forcing him down. Then he pressed his blade against the warrior's throat. Silence. The Emperor stood, his glowing eyes locked on the scene before him. Elias was breathing hard, sweat dripping from his forehead. "Yield," he said. Relvek stared at him for a long moment. Then, to Elias's surprise, he smirked. "You are smarter than you look, human." Then he raised his hands. "I yield." The arena exploded with cheers. Elias stepped back, lowering his weapon. His heart was still pounding, but he had done it. He had won. The Emperor's decision. Elias stood before the Emperor once more, this time in the royal chamber. The Xalvera stood beside him, arms crossed. Talzok studied Elias carefully. "You have passed the trial of honor." Elias nodded. "So, what now?" The Emperor leaned forward. "You have proven your strength, mind, and spirit. The people respect you. There is no more doubt." Elias shifted uncomfortably. He already knew where this was going. "The wedding will proceed as planned," Talzok continued. Elias sighed. "Look, Your Majesty, I respect your people, and I appreciate the trust, but I never agreed to this marriage." The Emperor's glowing eyes flickered. "You would reject my daughter?" Elias glanced at Xalvera, who was watching him closely. Then he turned back to the Emperor. "I would reject forcing her into something she doesn't want. Does she even have a choice?" Talzok looked at his daughter. "Xalvera." Xalvera hesitated. Then she stepped forward. "Father, this is not the way to unite our people." The Emperor frowned. "Explain." She took a deep breath. "We need trust between Zorvath and humans. A forced marriage is not trust. It is politics." The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then he exhaled. "You speak with wisdom, my daughter." Elias's eyebrows shot up. "Wait, that worked." Talzok turned back to Elias. "Then let us negotiate a new alliance, one of partnership, not obligation." Elias grinned. "Now that I can agree to." Xalvera smirked. "Finally, something we both agree on." Talzok nodded. "Then it is settled." Elias let out a breath of relief. "No forced wedding, no war, and I'm still alive. Not bad for a week's work." But deep down, he had a feeling this wasn't the end of his journey with the Zorvath. It was just the beginning. Elias Carter sat on the grand balcony of the Zorvath Palace, watching the twin suns set over the horizon. The sky was painted in deep shades of purple and gold, and the alien city below was alive with lights and celebrations. Even after the intense trials, the Zorvath people were still celebrating his victory in the arena. Beside him, Princess Xalvera leaned against the railing, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon. "You survived," she said with a smirk. "I have to admit, I didn't expect you to win." Elias chuckled. "Wow, thanks for the vote of confidence." She shrugged. "You proved yourself, not just to my people, but to me." Elias turned to her. "And what about you? Did you really want this marriage, or was it just politics?" Xalvera was silent for a moment before answering. "At first, it was politics. My father believed an alliance with humans could only be sealed through marriage. But I wanted something different. She looked at him. Now, I see that trust is more important than tradition. Elias nodded. Glad we're on the same page. A new offer. Before they could continue, a deep voice interrupted them. Captain Carter. Elias turned to see Emperor Talzok approaching. The old ruler walked with slow, powerful steps, his golden robes flowing behind him. Behind him, several high-ranking Zorvath nobles followed, their expressions serious. Elias stood up. Your Majesty. The Emperor studied him for a long moment. You have done more than survive the trials. You have earned the respect of my people. You have also shown wisdom in your choices. Elias exchanged a glance with Salvera. I appreciate that. Talzok stepped closer. Which is why I have a new proposal for you. Elias tensed. If it's another marriage proposal. The Emperor actually chuckled. No, though I believe my daughter would choose for herself if that day ever comes. Elias blinked. Salvera smirked but said nothing. Talzok continued. I offer you a position as an official ambassador between Earth and the Zorvath Empire. Elias stared at him. An ambassador. The Emperor nodded. You have proven that you can survive among my people, that you can think like a warrior and reason like a leader. You are the perfect bridge between our species. Elias hesitated. That's a huge responsibility. Salvera crossed her arms. You've already been thrown into Zordath politics. You might as well make it official. Elias sighed, running a hand through his hair. You know, I was just supposed to be a pilot. Now I'm fighting monsters, winning duels, and apparently shaping the future of two civilizations. He let out a laugh. Guess I've had worse jobs. Talzok's eyes glowed in approval. Then you accept. Elias looked at Salvera, then at the vast city below. He thought about Earth, about the future of humanity and the Zorvath. He wasn't sure where this path would lead, but one thing was clear. He wasn't just some lost pilot anymore. He grinned. Yeah, I accept. The future begins. The next morning, Elias stood before a massive crowd in the royal courtyard. Zorvath citizens gathered to hear the announcement, their glowing eyes filled with curiosity and excitement. Talzok raised his hand for silence. Today we welcome a new path forward, the Emperor declared. Captain Elias Carter of Earth will serve as the first official ambassador between our worlds. The crowd erupted in cheers. Elias stepped forward. He had never given a speech like this before, but he figured he'd just speak from the heart. I never expected to be here, he began. I came to this world as a stranger. I fought for my life. I learned about your people, your traditions, and your strength. And now, I stand here, not as an outsider, but as someone who believes in a future where humans and Zorvath can stand together. More cheers. Salvera stepped beside him and whispered, Not bad, human. Elias smirked. I try. As the celebrations continued, Elias looked up at the sky. There was still so much he didn't know, so much he had yet to experience. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't just drifting through the stars. He had a purpose, and this was just the beginning. The end.